Hi, and welcome to Meetings in Math. You are here for section 9.1, scatter plots. Our essential question is, how can you construct and interpret a scatter plot? Today, you will need your Jaguar Jots on section 9.1, a pen or pencil. You may find a highlighter helpful, your bright ideas, your determination, and as always, your problem-solving skills. Let's begin with some definitions about scatter plots. A scatter plot is a graph that shows the relationship between two data sets. And these two data sets are ordered pairs and they're graphed on a coordinate plane. So just think about, we're just graphing ordered pairs. So to begin with, we have some relationships we want to look at. And here's 4 very common relationships that you could have after graphing a scatter plot. So we're going to read these from left to right. And this very first one right here, you can see that it's going uphill. So if you were standing here, you'd go uphill. So this is called a positive linear relationship. But then you notice there's this little dot that doesn't fit the rest of the data. This is called an outlier because it doesn't fit the rest of the data. So it's something that just doesn't fit with what we're trying to say in our data set. The next one, if you were to stand right here, you'd be going downhill. And so this would be called a negative linear relationship. And on both of these, why are they called linear relationships? It's because they're making a straight line. On the next one, we can see that there's some kind of relationship because they're still all kind of put together. You can kind of make a prediction with what's happening right here. You kind of expect them to be in this order right here, but it's not a straight line. And so we would call this a nonlinear relationship. There's still something going on that makes sense, but it's not a straight line. And then in this last one, it just kind of looks like that somebody put dots wherever they felt like it. And so we would call this a no relationship because obviously there's nothing that's making sense there. So other things that we want to pay attention to is that you could also have clusters, and this is where things are grouped and or they have gaps. So for instance, you might have a group of data up here in the corner and another group of data maybe down here and nothing in between. So let's go ahead and look at a scatter plot. We're going to examine this scatter plot of data and then answer some questions about it. And this one happens to be comparing study time, so how much you studied in minutes compared to what your test score was. So for example, if you studied around 20 minutes and you got a score of like 75-ish. So if you studied for 60 minutes, what was your test score? And so this is asking a very specific point. So study time, you read across until you get to 60 minutes, which is right here. And then you find out there's your dot. And so you read across and that was your score. And it looks like that would be about 92-ish. So according to the data, it looks like a person that studied for 60 minutes scored around a 92. So now it's asking us to describe the relationship between the data. So this means now we're really talking about what does the data mean? And so one of the very first things that's usually easiest to talk about is that relationship like we did in those 4 other examples. And so if you were to look at this, it does look like it is going uphill and kind of clustered together in a way that we can make a line. And so it does look like it has a positive linear relationship. And what does that mean? It means that it looks like the longer a person studies, the higher that they scored on the test, for the most part. There is a problem, which we'll get to in a little bit. Okay, so what else? Well, it doesn't look like there's any clusters. It doesn't look like there's a group here and a group here. So we could say that. But there is 2 ways to talk about this right here. We could talk about this as a gap as well. So there is a gap in our data. This person right here studied for a really long time, but did not score well on the test. So we could talk about a gap when X was about 98 to about 119. So about 98 minutes to 119 minutes, there was a gap where we didn't have any data that happened. So we could talk about that. And we definitely want to talk about this point that is, what is that point called? It is called the outlier, and we're going to name it. That's at 120 minutes. The person scored 70, and we can just name it as the point. And so here we talked about the data. We talked about what does it mean? The longer the person studies, the higher they scored on the test. And then some things that were a little bit different. No obvious clusters. There's this gap and there's this outlier. So that's saying that everything follows this positive linear relationship except for these exceptions. And that's it about scatter plots. Can you think of a time that you might use scatter plots to organize your data? You've probably seen them a whole lot more than you realize. It's just now we're formalizing them for you. Thank you so much for joining us in this lesson, and I can't wait to see you in our next lesson. Remember to be kind to one another because we can all use some extra kindness in our lives. Bye for now.